Hello, everybody in YouTube land. Thanks a lot for clicking on the link. Please like below and feel free to subscribe and follow me. You can get a little bit of information about me, just simply from the channel here. But I encourage you. I do have books on Amazon and various websites that I use, consultingcreatives.wordpress.com, among others. But this particular video is about a couple of different interesting topics related to what I do as far as marketing and also optimization, I call it. So the optimization is both of individuals. So I work with meditation practice and kind of being the most optimal person you can from a diet and overall physical health and mental health and all that. And I also work with nonprofits and for-profit businesses in order to optimize fundraising, marketing, things of that nature. But this particular video is about a fairly interesting one. There's kind of I guess a homesteader who lists lots of different videos here, and they're really not too flamboyant or anything like that, but they have in excess of 1 million hits. And that particular one was how to get rid of an irritating neighbor with a crayon. And so, as far as being marketing people, you have to ask yourself, what is it that works in order to to market. And I find it very interesting that a lot of what I would call very junk products and nonsense services and things of that nature that really don't have any value actually are some of the biggest sellers. And so how do we get to that point as development and marketing people where we can essentially sell ice to Eskimos? And so that particular video, how to get rid of an irritating neighbor with a crayon, it's very very witty and very intelligent kind of a title, because we all have irritating neighbors, obviously. And it's kind of weird. I believe on one of the episodes of Sherlock, one of the lines was that essentially your relationship with your landlord is one of enemies. And similarly, it seems no matter where you live, the neighbors are often kind of an irritation and an enemy to you. In that particular case, this individual bought this piece of property after the neighbor had already been there, and the family's neighbor, or the neighbor's family had been there for several decades and had developed the habit of using this particular homestead that the YouTuber had bought. And so the neighbor liked to go over there and use the YouTuber's property and just kind of hang out there and all kind of stuff. But once the YouTuber was living there, so I mean, it kind of it's unbelievable that somebody would go on somebody else's property and they knew it was their property and just trespass essentially. And also very nosy, this particular individual. And through evidence, the YouTuber knew that the neighbor was not just going over onto the property, but actually going into the buildings and things of that nature. And it's a very long and elaborate video, and in fact one of the comments was, this is the definition of blabbering. So essentially, the man spent about 20 minutes or more talking about something that could have been covered in 5 minutes. But as marketing people, we know that that is not that marketable of a video. Okay, I'm just going to kind of lay it out so that very shortly and sweetly. And so, particularly in American culture, I've noticed that that type of thing does not work very well. Kind of the direct approach. Interestingly enough, when I was getting my master's degree in Finland, one of the African students there said that the Finnish people are like a train on tracks, and they have a destination to get to, and nothing is going to stop them, and so in Africa it's more a leisurely speed of life, and so he was kind of, I don't know, irritated by that or put off by that or whatever. So obviously we have different mores and different habits and all of that, and so most people having a 5-minute video how to get rid of your neighbor, well you just say it in that very short 5 minutes. It would be pretty easy, in fact, but the suspense factor and all that is taken away. So how do you get 1 million YouTube viewings through something as simple and kind of nonsensical as that? So essentially what happened is that the man wrote in crayon on a piece of paper, I left it for the trespasser, I know you're here and you're on camera, essentially is what happened. And after that the guy never came back is the story. So as far as getting rid of a neighbor, that's sort of what I wanted to comment and make my own kind of comments about that, because I have very irritating neighbors from time to time, and how in the world to get rid of those people. I had one that would constantly party and make noise and stuff and throw empty beer cans on my yard, for example. How do you get rid of somebody like that? Because a lot of times they will take reprisals on you. A lot of time it's kind of almost like a process of indoctrinating you, or kind of a hazing, sort of. Particularly with somebody who's been there for decades before you. It's kind of almost a hazing process, and that's what the other YouTuber kind of mentioned, is that the neighbor kind of would drive up and say, hey, I've been coming on this land for decades, and my father before me, and just because you bought it, we're not going to change our habits. So very tough situation, and that gets into kind of human behavior and the law and what's illegal and all that as well. And so particularly the way to get rid of an irritating neighbor for me is basically, it's very psychological in nature. So you have to think about what is this person's motivation. What do they get out of this trespassing behavior, and what is it that to them is beneficial? And a lot of times it is just kind of a dominance thing or an ego thing, where they really just don't give a damn about anybody but themselves, and so you have to kind of get them where it hurts, essentially. And so sometimes just passive aggressive behavior, so you don't get upset about the trespassing, can be one thing. But another thing, like with the crayon message that he left, it gets into their mind, and so they realize that you actually know what it is that they're doing, and that sort of thing. And so it can be very difficult. I know there's another neighbor, and so to kind of answer that, what did I do about the partying beer can thrower. I just approached him in kind of no uncertain terms that he's trespassing, and that's a criminal act, and he shouldn't be doing that. And so he did just kind of tone down after that. And each individual is a different case, really, honestly. So a lot of times it's just plain stupidity. A lot of people have very low quality standards, I guess. And so I've noticed, particularly in some neighborhoods that trespassing is just kind of a normal behavior, making a lot of noise and making kind of air pollution through smoking and burning stuff and chemical use and all that is very common, and so how do you mitigate a situation like that? Because it really is very difficult. A lot of people, if you do get the law involved, they will actually up their negative behavior. So it is very difficult, but ultimately the core of it is you have to kind of understand the psychology of your opponent is really, so what motivates them, what are they afraid of, what do they want, what do they not want, and kind of figuring out that is a lot of times the best, and in kind of a subtle kind of a way. So let me check my notes, real quickly here. And so essentially, there's a direct approach, indirect approach. What do they want? What are their motivating factors is really kind of what it all boils down to. So that really is kind of what it is all about, is understanding what those things are. And so once you kind of get that, you can kind of understand. In another house, I had an irritating guy who apparently just knew everything about what I should do to take care of that house. That was really odd. And I noticed that he would kind of come, and just kind of walk the property line. That was kind of creepy. It's kind of weird that he would walk the property line, and apparently he thought he owned that, or maybe he did actually own that, but it was an area that was right on it was actually, he had his driveway, and then there was some space, and then my driveway, and it looked as if really where he was walking was my property, but you have to do a survey to really know for absolute certain. So why is it that people kind of encroach on you? It's it's a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of stupidity. It's all kind of mixed up. But this particular individual, had all kind of weird advice, and also creepily enough, he had kind of a history of all the behaviors and all the personalities of the people that lived in the house prior to me. That was really kind of bizarre as well. And so, so I just kind of didn't really say much to him, and kind of used humor to a certain extent. A lot of times using humor can be a really diffusing technique as well. And so for some people, if the situation is very heated and everything, humor can backfire. But I think probably 7 times out of 10 at least, using humor to kind of diffuse a situation is best. But this particular individual, it seemed like I started to ignore him for a while, and he kind of grew cool for a while. So I kind of almost think that the man was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic, as part of it, and he's just kind of an idiot is part of it as well. I think, some people are just plain stupid, and you can't fix that, to be completely honest, unfortunately. But, I never had a confrontation with him. Because, a lot of times that will, particularly with somebody like that, kind of ignite even more negative behavior. And that creepy guy is there, he was always home, so essentially he's there when you're not at home. And, what is this creep going to do? It's really, so you didn't really say a whole lot to him. And, it was, weird and stupid advice. It just kind of said, oh, that's great. But ultimately, you got to do what you think is right for your property. He had advice on landscaping. He had advice on what to do with the gutters and all this. And painting is like, what kind of moron? He comes up to their neighbor, gives them all this advice. And, it may be good advice, but in this particular case, it was obvious that the guy did not know, how to take care of the exterior house, because he had, shrubs up, 12 feet high, and his gutters were falling off his house. So, what is the psychology of somebody who is, telling somebody else to fix their house when their house is falling down? What is that? What does that tell you about this guy? Well, one, he's a goofball, and two, he doesn't think logically. And so somebody's a goofball and doesn't think logically. What is that? How do you approach that? So, probably just kind of, a very low level amount of just kind of passivity and politeness, and maybe a little bit of humor is probably the way to go. But, still to this day, the guy is a kind of an irritating nuisance. But his behavior is not, is quite as in your face as it was in the past. So, really, so that's kind of my take on how do you make a really great, intriguing YouTube video on material that is almost nothing. And then also, how do you get rid of a neighbor? Because we all, want to get rid of our neighbors from time to time. And so, you have to understand their perspective, and pushing an envelope too much is oftentimes not a very wise thing to do either. So, thanks a lot. Enjoy. Find me. I've written interesting books about how to make your life better, how to work on your old house, a variety of things. I do, grant writing and marketing and development and things of that nature as well. And realize you got to take a little bit of humor with all this, because you'll drive yourself crazy. So thanks a lot. Subscribe and buy all my books.